What's good in the YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai anyone here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Kamen Build episode 38. This episode is called Mad World, and this episode was pretty good. It was pretty insane what happened in this episode. It introduced us to a new rider, finally, and it also introduced, and it also led to 3 deaths. Yes, 3 deaths from major characters. I mean, one's like really major, the other 2 are like semi-major, but it was like more of a question of when they were gonna die, not if they were gonna die. Like, everyone knew they were gonna die at some point, the 2 of them, but it was a question of when. So anyway, as far as things go, this episode starts with us seeing that, Sento now is Katsuragi, and the thing is that he can't recognize the fact that he's changed his appearance and everything like that. In the meantime, what we also end up seeing is that Evault goes up against Grease, Gintaku, and Ryoga in another attack where they do like their rider kicks. But again, you have to remember something. They activated their drivers twice, which leads to them not being able to do it as easily. Like, it hurts them to use their drivers twice in a row. On top of that, Evault now is in his final form, so that's another important detail. So he's way stronger, and they're trying to do this after already using their drivers. So basically, they're basically risking everything to try to do one big attack, which is just going to fail anyway. And that's what exactly happens. Eventually, Gintaku does manage to get them away. And what this leads to following that is that they regroup at the base. And what happens is that we end up seeing Katsuragi as Sento, kind of looking over things, trying to understand everything that's going on. He's curious about, he knows of who Ryoga and Mizora are. That's something that actually is explained in this episode. He knows of them, but he doesn't have his memories of Sento. He only has Katsuragi's memories, so he only knows what Katsuragi knew of both of them. Again, you have to keep in mind that Mizora was used to purify the bottles, and Ryoga he knows because of the research done having to do with Evault's DNA and all that kind of stuff. So it's very important to keep in mind. Now, in the meantime, what we also end up seeing is that when he sees Gintaku, he immediately has a very particular response to him, which is like, Mr. Himawari, and he's very professional, but at the same time, he's not really someone that Katsuragi praised or really liked as a person, and he ends up having a discussion later with him, explaining his whole philosophy and feeling towards the rider systems and how it was used during the war and why the war even happened and how he had hoped that the war would never actually occur and how things had spiraled out of control. And all these different things happen. What we do end up seeing constantly throughout this episode is that there are several times throughout this episode where Katsuragi's face will change to Katsuragi, and then it will switch back to Sento, and it will go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth when he's speaking. Now, does that mean that his personality is coming out? Possibly. It's very unclear as to why that's happening. It's not clear if anyone actually sees it other than the viewer. That's never really mentioned. If it is, that's interesting. If it isn't, then that says something as well. Again, does bring up a big difference in things, and I'm curious as to, will they separate, or how that will work in the end, or how will they gain back Sento's memories, because again, he doesn't know all the stuff that Sento knew. He only knows what Katsuragi knew, which is good in some ways, but at the same time, if you have the whole picture, you're like in the most ideal situation. But if you just have Katsuragi's memories, it's limited, because he doesn't have any of the fighting skills or background that Sento has with the current state of affairs. So keep that in mind, that he's lacking a lot of knowledge that he would need in order to really be proficient in battle right now. Though he does fight, so keep that in mind. He is still going to fight in this episode, and he fights in general. So what does end up happening after all that occurs, we also end up seeing that in the meantime, Evault does end up going to Namba, and he ends up appearing in the form of what do you call it, Suichi. And the thing is that the reason why he appears in the form of Suichi is because he's actually not Suichi. He didn't take over the body of him. That's something that people were suspecting with the preview from the previous episode. It wasn't that he actually took over the body, it was more so that he took on the appearance. Because again, he can actually change his form to anyone if he wants to. He changed his form to Suichi because he liked that form and he wanted to have a form to represent when he ruled the world, when he ruled Japan or whatever. And at the same time, he can also take on the form of Namba himself, and he does that, and it actually really frustrates Namba because he's like, are you trying to make fun of me because of the fact that he takes on the form of Namba himself? And the thing is that at the same time all of this is happening, things are definitely said, and it sounds like, Evil still kind of want to work with them, but it's definitely not the same kind of situation where Evil wasn't in power. Evil has complete, he has real power now. At the same time, what does end up happening is that the idea of working together is something that isn't very clear in their minds. Now, what does end up happening eventually, though, is that we end up seeing the Washio Bros, and the Washio Bros are actually put inside of the chambers where they fill them with gas to increase their limits. And the thing is that at this point, what is basically said by Utsumi is that if they get any more gas after this point, they'll die. There's no way they can get any stronger than they'll get after this dose of gas. So they basically have to do it now, or they're just not going to be able to do it at all. At the same time, what does end up happening is that eventually Evo does speak to Utsumi, and there's even a point where he offers Utsumi an extra evil driver. Yes, that does end up happening, and the thing is that he asked him to join him on his side and be an assistant to him and work alongside him, but as a rider in this case, not just as Utsumi the assistant, like he's been throughout the series. And, again, he still is an important character, but it's very interesting to keep that in mind. And Utsumi initially does not want to join Evolto. Now, what does end up happening is that from here, he ends up actually contacting Gentaku about this and about joining forces and working together to stop Evolto, because otherwise he'll take over the entire world, not just Japan. And at the same time, you have to remember that Namba represents Saito right now, and initially what does end up happening is that Greece does not want any part in combat because of the fact that Saito is the nation that really took advantage of him, his people, and everything, and he just doesn't want to be a part of this whole combat or confrontation and working alongside them. But at the same time, what does end up happening is that the others do agree to fight, just for the day at least. And what does end up happening is that eventually they end up going to this kind of parking lot kind of area, this industrial building, to meet up, where we end up seeing Utsumi coming, and what happens is that Evolto asks, so will you join me? And at that point what ends up happening is that a whole bunch of heavy guardians appear, as well as the Washio Bros are there, and we end up seeing the Namba Heavy Industries president, Namba himself, basically saying, this is our response. And what happens is that following this, Evolto changes the layout of the area to more of a desert scene, which is fairly common for a lot of these battles. And what ends up happening is that the heavy guardians are destroyed like that, pretty much destroyed in seconds. As far as the Washio Bros, they do end up fighting and doing okay. Eventually, Great Cross-Seas Dragon, which is Ryoga, arrives in battle. We do end up seeing Greece as well, which immediately leads to... Not Greece, Rogue appear as well, which leads to Utsumi asking Gentaku, so I guess you're going to fight alongside us? And he says, yes, just for today. And the thing is that Following this, we end up seeing the Washio Bros try to do all sorts of attacks. At one point, Evolto does a special attack, which leads to one of the bros completely losing their whole energy and just dying. So that is the engine bro initially dies. And then, following this, what happens is that at one point, Ryoga looks like he's about to be destroyed, but what happens is that instead, he ends up is that the Remco bro, who actually is in the combined mode, because he actually takes the gear engine bro's bottle and he puts it in to do the combined mode. He ends up actually, taking one, like saving Ryoga, and then he actually ends up dying. So yes, both Washio Bros do die this episode. It's pretty insane to think that they both die right away. And what does end up happening is that eventually Evolto manages to quickly teleport to where Namba is. He tries to, threaten him and go up to him. And what happens is that Namba just basically freaks out, gives up everything, like gives up his country, he's willing to give up money, whatever. He's willing to give up his business if Evolto will spare his life. And what happens is that he says, Evolto's like, I love people like you, the way that you act and you give up and all that kind of stuff. And and what happens is that he's giving him a hug, and suddenly he goes from giving him a hug to the point that Namba suddenly turns to dust. Yes, he's destroyed. He's obliterated right then and there. And the screen that Utsumi was able to see Namba from, he then ended up seeing Evolto saying, "Oh, hello, Utsumi." And what happens is that he then ends up teleporting back. And at that point, all three of the Sento members are gone. He says, will you fight against me to get revenge against Saito, or will you join me? Against Namba, or will you join me? And what happens is that he flashes back to his memories of Namba and his connections and his allegiance to him. And what happens is that eventually, after they're all fighting, and keep this in mind, there is plenty of combat. Sento, as I said before, as Katsuragi does fight. He actually uses rabbit mode. We do end up seeing at one point, by the way, that Ryoga ends up using both the Great Cross-Seas Dragon as well as Cross-Seas Magma. So keep it in mind, he does use both forms, but it doesn't really have a lasting effect or really do a lot of damage. But eventually, as I said before, with Utsumi, he, as angry as he is, he decides for some reason to actually join Evolto on his side, even though the one that destroyed the people that he cared about most is, even though he's the one that destroyed them, Utsumi is still willing to join up with Evolto. And he does this, and what this leads to is that he actually gains the second evil driver, and he uses it to become Kamen Rider Mad Rogue. Yes. So we have Mad Rogue and we have Rogue. For whatever reason, that's what they decided to do. Again, you would have thought that it would have been a power-up, but for some reason they decided to make them two separate things. As far as whether or not I'm expecting Utsumi to be a lasting character in the senses of remaining on the side of evil, I don't know. He might join the side of good eventually, but as of now, he is on the side of evil. And that's also where the title for the episode comes from. Mad World, Mad Rogue, it's a mad world, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, overall, things are looking interesting. Next episode, we will be introduced to Sento's final form, the Genius form, which is a form that utilizes all 60 bottles and takes full advantage of them. One thing I forgot to also mention in this episode that many people may note is that there's a point where Evolto uses the Pandora's box and he actually tries to insert the bottles in, and he's able to make new evolutions with the bottles that lead to special bottles. These ones have a different coloration from their normal color, but are generally the same idea, just they're more powerful, I guess. Not exactly clear as to how that whole thing's going to work, if we'll see anyone actually get to use them and how that whole thing will be. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. What you guys looking forward to next episode when we finally get to see the genius form. When do you think Sento will gain back his memories of being himself rather than being Katsuragi? Do you think that Utsumi will eventually side with Sento and the others, or do you think that he will remain loyal to Evolto for the rest of the season? Again, there's probably about 10 to 12 episodes left, so keep that in mind. I believe people are saying it's going to be about 12, which is good. That means it's going to end at 50. But we'll have to wait and see. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to know your guys' opinions about this episode. I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Sarah 1, and goodbye, guys.